The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the once bustling town of Maple Ridge. The streets were eerily silent, save for the occasional rustle of leaves stirred by a chilly breeze. It was a quiet evening, deceptively so. For those who knew, the calm was merely the brief pause before a storm that no one could have predicted. At the heart of the town stood a small group of survivors, gathered around the fading glow of a campfire. Among them was Marcus, a former firefighter whose steady hands and sharp mind had saved more than one life in the early days of the outbreak. Alongside him was Elena, a nurse with a fierce determination to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Then there was Sam, the youngest of the group, whose sharp eyes and quick reflexes made him invaluable as a scout. Lastly, Mia, a former teacher, now a quiet but steady presence, reminding everyone of the humanity they were fighting to keep alive. They were outnumbered, that much was clear. The town had been overrun, homes abandoned or destroyed, and the undead horde grew by the hour. Rumors circulated about groups of survivors elsewhere, but here, in Maple Ridge, the hope felt thin. Yet, despite everything, this small band had taken a stand. Marcus looked around the fire, his eyes scanning the darkened streets beyond the flickering light. "We can't keep hiding," he said quietly. "If we want to survive, we need a plan. We can't just wait for them to come to us." Elena nodded, biting her lip. "I agree. But we need to know what we're up against first. We have to find a way to scout the area without getting caught." Sam shifted nervously. "I can go. I've been watching from the rooftops. I know their movements better than anyone." Mia sighed but didn't argue. "We all have our roles. We can't afford mistakes." The survivors had learned to trust one another in the face of overwhelming danger. Each had witnessed the slow unraveling of the world they once knew, neighbors turning into the very monsters they now feared. Yet, they refused to give in to despair. Suddenly, a distant noise pierced the quiet, a low, guttural groan carried on the wind. The group froze, eyes wide, hearts pounding. The undead were near. Marcus grabbed a rusted metal pipe from the ground. "Get ready," he whispered. "This is it." From the shadows, figures began to emerge, slow, relentless, but terrifying in their numbers. The undead were relentless, their eyes blank but hungry. The survivors formed a tight circle, backs pressed together, weapons ready. But as the first wave of the horde closed in, something unexpected happened. A piercing whistle echoed through the night, and from behind a ruined wall, a pack of dogs appeared, barking furiously at the approaching threat. The undead momentarily faltered, confused by the sudden distraction. Seizing the opportunity, Elena called out, "Now! Move!" The survivors darted toward an old warehouse nearby, the dogs leading the way. Inside, they found a momentary refuge, broken crates and scattered tools offering potential weapons. But there was no time to rest. "We need to fortify this place," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. "Barricades at the doors and windows. We hold here tonight." Hours passed as the survivors worked together, nailing boards and stacking furniture. The distant groans never ceased, a haunting reminder that the horde was always just outside. Elena tended to a fresh cut on Sam's arm, her hands steady despite the chaos. "You did well out there," she said softly. "But this is only the beginning." Outside, the undead horde gathered like a tide, waiting to break through their fragile defenses. The survivors knew that dawn would bring a new battle, one that would test their courage, their strength, and their will to survive. Mia sat quietly in a corner, clutching a faded photograph of her family. "We have to believe we can make it," she whispered to herself. "For their sake, and for ours." As the night deepened, the survivors took turns keeping watch, every shadow and sound a potential threat. The fire burned low, but their resolve burned brighter. The fight for Maple Ridge was far from over. But in that moment, surrounded and outnumbered, a small group of brave souls stood unbroken, ready to face whatever the darkness would throw at them. Would you like me to continue with part 2? Or any specific twists or characters you want included? The first light of dawn barely touched the horizon when Marcus shook off the exhaustion that threatened to drag him under. The night had been long, every minute stretched thin with the constant threat lurking just beyond their barricaded sanctuary. The groans and shuffles of the undead horde hadn't stopped. If anything, they seemed to grow louder as the sun fought its way through the gray sky. Inside the warehouse, the survivors gathered silently. The air was thick with tension. No one dared speak much, knowing that any sound could draw unwanted attention. Their eyes were heavy, faces worn from fear and sleeplessness, but the fire of determination still glimmered within them. Elena pulled out a small, battered first aid kit and began cleaning the wound on Sam's arm. "It's not infected yet," she said softly, "but we need to keep an eye on it. Even a small injury can become dangerous out here." Sam nodded, wincing slightly but determined not to show weakness. "I'm fine. We all have to be." Mia stood near a cracked window, staring out at the street below. The town looked deserted in the pale morning light, but she knew better than to trust appearances. "They're regrouping," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Marcus stepped closer. "We can't stay here long. This place is only a temporary refuge. The horde will find a way in if we're not careful." Elena pulled a crumpled map from her jacket, laying it flat on a dusty table. "We need to find a safer place, somewhere we can fortify properly and have access to supplies. The old fire station on Elm Street might work. It has storage rooms, and the walls are solid." Sam's eyes lit up. "And it's close enough that I can scout the way before we move." Marcus studied the map, nodding. "All right. But we have to move quickly, and quietly. The fewer encounters, the better." As the survivors prepared to leave the warehouse, a sudden noise echoed from the back, a soft but unmistakable shuffle. Everyone froze, weapons raised. A lone figure appeared from the shadows, staggering and slow, but unmistakably human. "Wait!" Marcus called out, stepping forward cautiously. "Who are you?" The figure blinked, confusion clouding their eyes. "I'm Michael," he said weakly. "I was separated from my group. They didn't make it." Elena rushed to his side, checking him for injuries. "You're lucky to be alive. Come with us, we're moving to the fire station." Michael nodded, grateful but clearly exhausted. "I don't know how much longer I can keep going." The group moved swiftly through the empty streets, the silence broken only by their careful footsteps and the distant moans of the undead. The dogs from the night before followed close behind, their alertness a small comfort amid the danger. But as they neared Elm Street, the survivors noticed a new threat, shadows flickering between the ruined cars, movement too quick and too deliberate to be part of the horde. Marcus signaled the group to stop and crouch low. "Those aren't the undead," he whispered. "We're not just fighting the horde anymore." Elena's grip tightened on her makeshift weapon. "Bandits," she said grimly. "Humans who've lost their way. They're more dangerous than the undead because they know what they're doing." Suddenly, a shot rang out, sharp and echoing through the empty street. The group scattered, ducking behind the wreckage of a burned-out vehicle. "Stay quiet," Marcus hissed. "We can't afford to start a fight here." The bandits' voices drifted closer, rough and threatening. "Come out. There's no hiding from us." Sam peeked over the hood of the car, spotting the bandits, armed and ruthless, their eyes filled with desperation. They were desperate enough to take on both the undead and other survivors. "Can we outrun them?" Mia whispered, trembling. Marcus shook his head. "Not with the horde nearby. We have to find a way to outsmart them." The survivors held their breath as the bandits searched for them, unaware of the dogs silently circling behind, ready to defend their human friends. For a moment, it seemed like all hope was lost, trapped between the living and the dead, outnumbered and surrounded. But the fight to survive had only just begun. "Would you like me to continue with part 3? Any specific elements you want me to focus on?" The tension was unbearable. Every breath the survivors took felt like a risk, every heartbeat a countdown to discovery. Hidden behind the burned-out car, the bandits prowled the street like wolves, their voices harsh, eyes scanning every shadow. Marcus motioned to the group, signaling them to stay perfectly still. The dogs, sensing the danger, growled low and quietly, eyes fixed on the approaching threat. Sam's heart hammered as he peered through a crack in the rusted metal. The bandits were heavily armed, rifles, pistols, and even makeshift melee weapons. Their desperation was evident. They weren't just looking for supplies, but for control of the area. Elena whispered urgently, "We can't fight them head-on. We need to create a distraction." Mia's eyes flicked to a nearby overturned dumpster, filled with loose debris. "If we can start a fire, the smoke will draw them away." Marcus nodded. "It's risky, but it might work." With careful movements, Marcus and Sam crept to the dumpster while Elena, Mia, and Michael kept watch. The drywood and paper inside were perfect tinder. Marcus struck a match, shielding it with his hand. The flame caught quickly, and soon, a thin plume of smoke began curling into the air. The bandits noticed immediately. "Fire!" one shouted. "Check it out!" As the bandits moved toward the smoke, the survivors seized the moment. They slipped quietly through a narrow alley, hearts pounding but steps steady. But just as relief began to wash over them, a sharp crack echoed behind, a rifle shot. Sam yelped, clutching his shoulder where a graze had caught him. "We're not safe yet," Marcus urged, helping Sam along. The group pushed forward, adrenaline overriding pain. The fire was growing, the bandits distracted, but the undead horde was never far behind. From the alley's end, they spotted the fire station, a solid building with reinforced doors and barred windows. The site was a promise of shelter, a beacon amid chaos. Inside, the survivors locked the doors quickly, bolting heavy furniture against the entrance. Sam sank against the wall, breathing heavily but alive. Elena knelt beside him, tearing strips from her shirt to bind the wound. "You're lucky. Could have been worse." Michael looked around, eyes taking in the space. "We can hold here. There's a basement with supplies and a back exit that might lead us out if things go south." Mia found a radio, cracked but functional. "We need to try and contact other survivors, coordinate something. We can't do this alone." Marcus agreed but kept his focus sharp. "First, we fortify. Then, we plan." Outside, the fire from the dumpster burned bright, a stark reminder of how close danger always was. The survivors exchanged glances, silently acknowledging the truth, outnumbered, surrounded, but far from defeated. Shall I continue to part 4? Any tweaks or new twists you want in the next part? The fire station's heavy doors groaned under the strain of makeshift barricades, but inside, the survivors found a fragile moment of safety. The air was thick with dust and the faint smell of old wood and rust, a stark contrast to the chaos waiting outside. Marcus paced the room, his mind racing. "We have a roof over our heads and supplies in the basement, but that won't hold forever. The undead are closing in, and the bandits won't give up easily." Elena sat beside Sam, who was resting but still pale from the wound. "How's he holding up?" Marcus asked. "Stable for now," she replied, her voice steady despite the exhaustion. "But any infection could turn bad quickly." Michael moved toward a dusty radio console, fiddling with knobs and wires. Static crackled, filling the room with white noise. "I'm trying to reach anyone out there. If there's a community, a safe zone, they have to hear us." Mia watched the radio with hope, but also with doubt. "It feels like we're the last ones left," she said quietly. "Sometimes I wonder if this world even remembers us." Suddenly, the radio sparked to life, faint voices, broken words, a desperate call for survivors. The message was unclear, but it was real. Elena smiled weakly. "We're not alone." But hope was tempered by fear. The undead pressed closer outside, their low moans a constant reminder of the dangers beyond the walls. A sudden crash echoed from the back exit. The survivors froze. Marcus grabbed his weapon, signaling for silence. The door shook violently as something, or someone, slammed against it. "Bandits," Sam groaned, struggling to his feet despite the pain. "No," Marcus said grimly. Worse. The door splintered, and a figure stumbled inside, not a bandit, not one of them, but something else. Pale skin stretched tight over sunken eyes, movements slow but relentless. The undead had found a way in. Elena raised her makeshift weapon, heart pounding. Get back! The survivors scrambled, fighting side by side against the intruder. It was only the beginning. The walls would not hold forever, and every shadow hid new threats. As night fell once more, the survivors steeled themselves. They were outnumbered and surrounded, but they were not broken. The fight for their lives had only just begun. Ready for part 5? Want me to add more twists, new characters, or deeper backstory? The shattered door swung open with a creak that seemed to echo through the hollow fire station. The survivors barely had time to react as more figures shuffled in, pale, lifeless, their empty eyes locked on fresh prey. Marcus barked orders, fall back to the basement. Barricade everything. The group moved swiftly, adrenaline sharp in their veins. Elena helped Sam as he limped, his wound bleeding but still manageable. Michael and Mia moved furniture to block the stairs, stacking chairs and crates with desperate urgency. But the horde was relentless. One of the undead broke through a fragile barricade, collapsing into the stairwell with a chilling groan. Mia screamed, raising her makeshift weapon and swinging fiercely. The blow knocked the creature backward, but the sound had already drawn more. Hold them! Marcus shouted, firing his last rounds from a pistol he'd found earlier. The basement was cramped but offered a momentary refuge. The dim light revealed supplies, canned food, water bottles, and a few forgotten tools. Elena quickly assessed the room. We can patch this up, she said. But it won't hold if they keep coming. Michael, eyes flicking to the cracked walls, muttered, there has to be another way out. As they searched, a faint noise caught Marcus's attention, a soft tapping from the far corner. He approached cautiously, weapon raised. There, hidden behind stacked crates, was a young woman, soaked, trembling, but alive. Please, she whispered. I've been hiding here for days. Her sudden appearance brought a mix of relief and suspicion. Trust was a fragile thing in this new world. Marcus lowered his weapon but kept his guard up. What's your name? Lena, she replied, eyes wide with fear. I know a way out. A route through the sewers that leads beyond the city. Elena exchanged a look with Marcus. This could be their chance, a slim, dangerous hope. But the horde wasn't done yet. Every moment in the basement increased the risk of discovery. The survivors faced a choice, stay and defend a crumbling fortress, or risk the unknown for a chance at survival. Outside, the undead continued their slow, methodical advance. Inside, the fragile alliance held, bound by desperation and the shared will to fight. The next move would decide their fate. Would you like me to continue with part 6? Any specific themes or developments you want? The musty scent of damp earth and rust filled the cramped basement as the survivors gathered around Lena, their new and fragile ally. Her story was both a beacon of hope and a heavy burden. The sewers run beneath the city, Lena explained, voice barely above a whisper. They're dangerous, unstable in places, and some parts are flooded. But if we can make it through, there's a chance we can reach the safe zone outside the city limits. Marcus studied her carefully, weighing the risk. We're trapped here anyway. The horde keeps growing. We either take this chance or we don't survive. Elena nodded, tightening her grip on a rusted pipe. We have to move before they break through again. Sam winced as he adjusted the bandage on his shoulder. I'm not sure I can make it through the sewers. We'll carry you if we have to, Mia said fiercely. No one gets left behind. The group prepared quickly, gathering supplies and checking weapons. Every second felt like borrowed time. When they slipped out through the back exit, the world outside was shrouded in an eerie quiet. The once bustling streets were now empty corridors of decay, broken glass glittering like shattered dreams beneath their feet. The entrance to the sewer was hidden beneath a rusted grate near the fire station. Lena pried it open, revealing a dark, yawning tunnel below. One by one, the survivors climbed down into the cold, dank darkness. The sound of the great snapping shut above them was a grim reminder that the world they knew was gone. Inside, the sewers were a maze of twisting tunnels, slick walls, and murky water pooling in places. The faint drip of water echoed like a metronome counting down their survival. Their footsteps echoed as they moved deeper. Every shadow seemed to flicker with movement, every sound amplified in the confined space. Suddenly, a low growl echoed ahead. The group froze. "Undead," Marcus whispered. "They found us." From the darkness, pale hands reached out, dragging themselves forward with eerie determination. The survivors fought desperately, using pipes, makeshift spears, anything to keep the creatures at bay. Michael's voice rang out, steady despite the chaos. "Keep moving. Don't stop." They pushed through, hearts pounding, lungs burning, every step a battle against both the undead and the suffocating fear. When at last they saw a faint light, the promise of an exit, relief surged through them. But the sewers held more than just monsters in the dark. Ahead lay traps, unknown dangers, and the fragile hope of freedom. Their journey was far from over. Want me to continue with Part 7? Would you like more action, character moments, or unexpected twists? The faint glow of daylight ahead was like a promise, a fragile thread of hope in a world swallowed by darkness. But as the survivors moved cautiously through the sewer tunnels, the dangers lurking beneath the city grew ever more real. The walls echoed with every footstep, and the distant groans of the undead seemed to multiply behind them. Lena led the way, her face pale but determined. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted. The survivors stumbled as a section of the tunnel collapsed, blocking their path with heaps of rubble and broken pipes. Marcus cursed under his breath. "We're trapped." Elena scanned the debris. "There has to be another way around." Sam grimaced but forced himself forward, determined to keep moving despite his wound. "I can't slow us down." Mia knelt beside him. "You're not slowing us down. We're in this together." As they searched, a sudden splash echoed from the flooded side tunnel, something large moving just beneath the water's surface. "Stay alert," Marcus warned. The undead weren't the only threat here. The city's ruins were unstable, and every step was a gamble. Michael found a narrow pipe running along the wall, just big enough for them to crawl through one by one. It was risky, but their only chance. One by one, they squeezed through the claustrophobic tunnel, water rising around them, muscles burning from the effort. When the last of them emerged, bruised and gasping, they found themselves in a forgotten maintenance chamber. The heavy metal door to the outside world was just ahead. But their relief was short-lived. Through the cracked door, the moans of the undead filled the air. The bandits had tracked them here, not just the mindless horde, but the desperate humans hunting for control. Marcus tightened his grip on his weapon. "This is it. No turning back." Elena took a deep breath. "We fight, for our lives, for our future." The survivors prepared for the battle that would decide everything. Outnumbered and surrounded once again, but ready to stand their ground. Ready for Part 8, the thrilling conclusion? Would you like it to end on a hopeful note or something more ambiguous? The heavy metal door trembled under the pounding weight of desperation. Outside, the groans of the undead mixed with the sharp shouts of the bandits, a horrifying chorus signaling the final confrontation. Marcus took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the narrow room. "This is it, our last stand." Elena checked her makeshift weapon, steady despite the whirlwind of fear inside her. Sam, battered but determined, gripped his wound and nodded. Michael ready to flare, and Mia's hands trembled slightly, but she stood tall. Lena, the stranger who had become their guide and hope, looked around. "We survived together, or not at all." The door buckled again, and the survivors braced themselves. The first bandit broke through, wild-eyed and furious, followed closely by others and the relentless undead pressing in behind. The survivors fought with every ounce of strength. Marcus fired, each shot finding its mark. Elena swung her pipe with precision, Mia stabbed fiercely, and Michael set a flare ablaze, momentarily blinding the attackers. The battle was brutal, every second a fight to keep the darkness at bay. The air was thick with sweat, fear, and the raw will to live. Just when it seemed the survivors might be overwhelmed, a distant rumble echoed through the chamber. Reinforcements, other survivors from the city, had come. Armed and ready, they pushed back the horde and bandits alike. The attackers faltered, then fled into the night. Silence fell, broken only by heavy breaths and the fading moans of the undead retreating. Marcus lowered his weapon, his eyes meeting those of his companions. "We made it. For now." Elena smiled, exhaustion washing over her. "This fight isn't over. But together, we have a chance." Sam, despite his pain, laughed softly. Outnumbered, surrounded, but never broken. As dawn broke over the ruined city, the survivors stood united, a small, brave spark of hope in a world overrun by darkness. Their story was far from finished. But for the first time in a long time, the future looked a little brighter. If you want, I can also help with summaries, character descriptions, or turning this into a script for your YouTube content.